Good morning. A quick mic check. I'm having some issues. With YouTube. Just a quick check here. Am I live? Just drop me a note. I believe I am. Check, 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 check. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. It is Thursday, the 10th of March, 2022. Episode number 2188. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Today, the biggest thing to note is that it is the U.S. rollover today. We begin our rollover into triple witching week next week. It is not quad witching, although Tweety Bird says that quad witching may come back. But so far, U.S. rollover begins. We had the ECB this morning. We also had CPI, which came in line. But if you look at the underlying numbers, you probably saw that the market popped higher on the number and then sold off. If you look at the numbers, the average is in line, but still some acceleration in costs. So the market responded to the downside there. The Ukraine headline risk continues. There was a lot this morning to look at. We had the ECB rate decision, and then the press conference. Many comments were made. Core inflation came in. Consensus was 6.4%. Came in at 6.4. Inflation year on year consensus 7.9 came in at 7.9. Month on month 0.8 versus 0.8, and core inflation for February month on month 0.5 versus 0.5. The initial claims was expected at 217,000 for the U.S. Came in at 227, so slightly worse. This morning, we're getting ECB's macroeconomic projections. At 9:30, we get the Fed's quarterly financial accounts. At noon Eastern, 30-year bond auction. At 1 p.m. and the monthly budget statement from the U.S. expected at 2 p.m. looking for a deficit of 49.5 billion. And then this morning we have RBA's Governor Lowe speaking at 4:45 out of Australia. And that's really what's in play. The market is in a risk-off sentiment this morning, which actually is a little bit surprising. It's well within the realm of probabilities, but a little surprising given yesterday's action. The volume is still relatively high, 370,000 contracts traded in the S&P. We have a multi-distribution profile again, so active price discovery overnight, 62 and a quarter points of range. The inventory is about 80% short this morning, 80% short. And the point of control, 42.45. Remember, 42.50 has been a kind of the over/under, and the 42.50 in the S&P has VWAP and mid right at it. So that's going to be our short-term over/under zone for this morning. So that's that. Overall, the European market's off more than the U.S. The European market has been a lot more volatile, which makes a whole lot of sense. In addition to the ECB this morning, a lot of positioning is going on. Crude taking a pop higher to 113 right now. Crude is just slightly off its highs for the session. The high for the session is 114.88. Crude's up 452 basis points. Gold holding the 2,000 level. Gold came off yesterday pretty strong after a very strong morning. Came off, but it's still skating along the $2,000 mark. Treasuries are off this morning. Treasuries continue a downtrend and a movement of value to the downside. Again, inflation pressures or increasing yield pressures, and the Eurobond, same story. Bitcoin and Ether really are in a consolidation, are in a balanced pattern, pretty whippy balance, but that's what we're seeing in the treasuries, in the indices as well. Let's take a look at yesterday. So yesterday we had a sideways open, an open auction in range. So this is the prior day's range right here. We had an open auction in range. We broke the OS low, broke the OS high, and then proceeded to break down for a nice pullback to the mid and VWAP. This is a setup. Didn't quite get to the full session VWAP, so this would have been a short to the downside back to the VWAP and looking for a retest of that 42.30 and then continuation lower. Of course, unfortunately, because we've had these pretty whippy mornings, really strong rotation up of 25 points there on relatively decent lifting. You can see the lifting dots there to bring us back above the open. So now we're basically fighting the open and the IB high. We finally broke through the IB high, pulled back to the IB high, continued to make higher highs. So yesterday, if you recall, if you were here, I talked about the high probability that we would have an open auction, and I'm looking for it to attack 42.75, 42.81. If you recall. What happens once just a quick pop quiz here to make sure you're listening. What was I expecting if it got into and tested 42.75 and 81? What was the plan yesterday? What's the trade of the day yesterday? Can anybody tell me? If you were here yesterday before the market opened, you heard this. What was the key plan? Good. Those are all correct. The key plan was, if you want to watch yesterday's video, is that 42.75 is likely to pose some resistance. Once it does, I expect it to pull back. That sets up along to 4,300. It sets up along to 4,300, and then we're looking for it to squeeze up into 43.43. I would have loved to see 43.43 yesterday, but 4,300, 43.43. So we tested 75 right here. So resistance, it bounced off of it a little bit, finally got through, got over the 81, which is right here, and then it pulled back to the IB, a deeper pull, much weaker than I expected, and it finally tried to push to that 4,300, and it stopped short of that, putting in a high just shy of 4,300 and falling back in. This is actually a victory for buyers here. Yeah, Brad did come in and fix the furnace. He sent one of his guys, not to fix it, but to run maintenance on it. Did you know that you're supposed to inspect your heating furnace once a year and replace your filter every month, and to always go for the cheap filters, but to replace them once or twice a month? I learned something yesterday from Brad. Look at the big brain on Brad. So we finished at the upper end of the range. Now, this is a victory for the buyers. It really is, because the buyers have come up here many times and have been confronted with sellers and been pushed all the way back. The wall, the line for buyers has been pushed back into the IB and all the way back into the middle of the range, and they ended up finishing above the IB, above VWAP yesterday, with settlement right against that weekly low at 42.75. So I expected this thing to pull back a little bit, and I expected us to continue to crawl into 4,300. That's what I was looking for this morning, and it just could not do that. So let's take a look on Edge Pro X. What has happened since? I like this chart because it's very clean. But if we look at what's going on here, again, a reminder A reminder, the orange profiles are the extended trading hours only. The blue profiles are the RTH. Yesterday's RTH was much smaller. So this is where I got the potential for 43.43 yesterday, is that the expectation is that we would have approximately 90 to 95 points of range, which brings us within target of about 43.30 to 43.25, but yesterday there was just a very little interest. You can see that the run up has a lot of zippers. Look at just as zipper city, zipper, 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 all over the place. This is a very labored price discovery. Very labored price discovery up, and then we have a very clean, kind of clear trend down. So this morning we end up having a multi-distribution profile with a weak low, and we're pushing that low right now. We just pushed 42.20 for a new overnight session low. We're well ahead of the VWAP up here and the point of control, which is right there at 42 right here. So 42.45, VWAP full session VWAP and full session mid at 42.50. Again, I'm using this area here as the over underline, and currently it's looking weak. So what we have is a market structure high pattern. Market structure high pattern. Despite the fact that we ended the one-time framing down, see the one-time framing has now ended on the way down yesterday by breaking the 42.75. This is why I expected it to trickle up overnight. I expected this to kind of make a run for the settlement from last week, 43.25 or so. And so we can come in, find ourselves within earshot of 43.43, and that would fulfill balance back as we had discussed. But instead, it is weak again. So this is likely to continue to test these lows unless some really fantastic news comes out. Today was a very important day. The CPI was something that was very, very, very sought after. Also, the ECB and what it would do. What it would do this morning, and the market didn't get any really fantastic news, and so it's pricing in more risk, therefore selling risk assets and moving that money elsewhere, wherever that is, don't know. So that's where we stand this morning. That's what's happened. So what did we accomplish overall? Unfortunately, and by the way, a reminder to you all that I'm looking at ESH2. So if my prices are wrong or seem off, it's because I'm remaining on the March contract today and tomorrow. Today and tomorrow, I'm just not going to bother rolling. So you can see at the top of the screen here, ESH2 instead of ESM2. If you roll with the exchange, you should be trading ESM2, but I'm not going to do that. So I need to maintain my charts for what they are. I need to maintain the history. Unfortunately, I lose a lot of data when I roll. Some of the data for this contract kind of falls off over time. You can see here it's just starting to fall off here because it's only showing the beginning of the March contract. So what that does is it obscures the fact that 43.43 right here has a high volume node, 4400 is a low volume node, then we form another high volume node here and another high volume node here at 4151. And so yesterday we end up rolling back up. We pushed right into the monthly VWAP. I meant to show you that. We rolled right into the monthly VWAP, which actually is showing up 42.98 yesterday. It showed up in the Dow. We pushed right up against it in the Dow. We pushed right up against it in the NASDAQ. We are muddled into it in the RTY. We tested the monthly VWAP and have come off. And so this creates a situation where today is quite murky. Okay, so we have our sandwich. If you remember the sandwich from above, right? 4275 to 4400 is a really important acceptance zone. This is why if we breach the 7581, pull back and are strong, we're looking for it to push to 43.43, right in here, right in the meat of this profile, which isn't shown properly because of rollover and the way the data is handled by the software. What we've done, however, we did accomplish this. We did breach in, but what we've done is we've fallen back off, and we are below yesterday's low. This is weakness. So structured trades are going to prioritize the short side, and we're going to be looking for buyers failing to exploit short positions coming into today's session. I'm going to say that again. We poked into balance. We rejected balance, and unless buyers are strong and bring us back up over 75, then this 4153 area, which is the next high volume node down in the old contract, that 4153 area is vulnerable and becomes a key target. That area is 70 points away. Okay, so we're not seeing good support by buyers coming into this. So with that being said, what are we expecting today? So let's scroll this over. I'm going to do this on this chart instead. What are we expecting for today? So the expectation is, I bring my pen. The primary expectation this morning, we have the overnight inventories at negative 85% or so right now. I expect this to become responsive. This is a weak low. We're opening below yesterday's low. I expect this to become responsive into yesterday's low, and I'm looking for sellers to start moving towards the 4200. I'm looking for the 4200. Poke through the 4200 right in here. Consolidate a little bit, looking for a bounce, but ultimately I'm looking for this thing to start exploring down. We have rotated back up and we have failed to hold the prior bounce. The prior bounce has been rejected, so the primary scenario becomes that the low, which is not unfair based on today's action, that low is likely to be tested. This morning, the overnight low, and so I'm expecting it to move away from the acceptance in yesterday's overnight and in the day session. I expect it to move away from that, become initiative away, and to work itself back right into this point of control at 4170. So that's the target here, 4170 to the short side. That's 50 points away, well within the realm of what the S&P can do. The alternative is we push and then we consolidate out of range of yesterday's action. We consolidate, and then attempt to push back in. We end up with a lower high, lower low, and a very choppy day as we get into rollover. Okay, I'm not seeing too much on the calendar tomorrow. We have GDP from Great Britain, we have Canadian unemployment, and then we have the Michigan sentiment prelim into tomorrow. I'm not seeing an incentive for anybody to readjust positions going into tomorrow's session, so this may be a snoozer. So what does that mean? Let's talk about what traders need to act on. You are all part of my prop group, and we're talking about today's plan for the indices. What I'm looking for, the actionable items for today are simple. We're looking for responsive buyers to come in early on. We're going to gauge how those responsive buyers lift the market into the 42.38 area, and then the over-underline, again, the over-underline is right here. The overnight point of control, 45, okay, and the day generated levels, of 50, which is also the mid-century. The mid-century right here, 42.50. This is the line of defense. This is the Alamo right here. If it gets above there, then the short thesis is wrong. But probably it is likely to push back up, get tangled at 38, right up here, with a defense at 45 and 50. And I'm looking for it to let go, for the buyers to let go, and for sellers to resume their business that they've been doing for the last 2 months, resume their business to get us back up, down to 41.70. The main reason for this, remember, we look at the big picture, and the main reason for this, again, what is the main reason for this? Remind me, we started with this. Let's see if you're listening, because I really need you to get this. I need you to succeed at this. The main reason we're favoring the short side is what? Remember the big picture, the auction. What has the market done? What is it trying to do? How good of a job is it doing? The main reason being that we poked into the 75 above. We came into the balance zone, which is dominated by 43.43 up here, the magnet, right up here. This is what we expect it to do. We expect it to respond back to the magnet. And what it did is it poked through and it fell off. That's the reason we are favoring shorts. Not because of some level that was created today, not because of some moving average crossover, because the narrative, the big players have already spoken and they're favoring the short side. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Don't get caught up in the minutia of a short-term chart. We failed to push and hold 42.75, which is balance. That's where balance is. We expect the market to push into balance and hold the 43.43. If failed to do so, we want to trade with the people who successfully rejected balance. And so we're looking for 41.70 and then eventually 41.51, this low right here. I hope you get it. Good luck, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Take care.